This video has been funded in part by the Guild via Patreon. Check out the links in the description or at the end of this video for more details. Hello everybody, my name is Gildart, and welcome back to another pros vs cons review. It's time to take a look at the Dynasty Warriors game that I've probably spent the most amount of time with overall, but I do need to be honest, it's been a long time since I've played it. The third entry in the Dynasty Warriors Gundam series would see a lot of drastic changes in every aspect, from story to visuals to even gameplay mechanics. Dynasty Warriors Gundam 3 released in Japan on PS3 and Xbox 360 on December 16th, 2010, while North America would see it June 28th, 2011, and PAL regions on July 1st. We also got to see two fairly big Gundam series in 00 and Unicorn released between Dynasty Warriors Gundam 2 and 3, so we can expect the inclusion of some of those mobile suits as well. Jumping back into this game, I know I spent almost 200 hours on it before completely moving on to something else, whereas with Dynasty Warriors Gundam 2, I had only spent about 70 hours before dropping it. Considering I love the upgrade from the first game to the second, this third entry should be just as much of a jump if you look at the amount of time I spent on it, right? I hear so many people saying that this is their favorite entry. While I was streaming the first game to get all the achievements, the chat would go back and forth between 2, 3, and Reborn for their favorite Dynasty Warriors Gundam. This is also the only entry in the series not to get any extra ports aside from the main home console release. So no PS2 port, no PSP port, and even though the Vita released a year later, we wouldn't see Bandai Namco try to port to that handheld either. So all we have to look at is the PS3 and 360 release. I did import the Japanese version on PS3 as well because the last two entries had some exclusive music, so I'm interested to see if that trend continues. And now it's time to find out if all of the time I spent on this game was truly worth it. But before we go too far, don't forget to give this video a like, comment with your thoughts below, and of course subscribe if you haven't already. Alright, no more delays, let's jump into Dynasty Warriors Gundam 3 with the first Pro. Let's start off with everyone's favorite topic, the graphics. Dynasty Warriors Gundam 3 goes for a cel-shaded look as opposed to the more realistic look of previous games. When you start up the first stage, you'll be greeted with this incredible stylistic change, almost like you've jumped right into the anime. The mobile suits may not be as shiny as they were in the last game, but that's something I'm willing to lose if we get these new visuals. The shading is done to perfection. If you've ever seen someone's custom cel-shaded Gunpla, this is pretty much on par with that. Sometimes it even looks like you're playing a 2D game, but you can still tell based on the shading that these mobile suits are 3D. These spectacular visuals are carried over to the cutscenes, which look even better than the gameplay. With the first Dynasty Warriors Gundam, I complained that there was this weird letterboxing to the cutscenes. With Dynasty Warriors Gundam 2, they removed that, but didn't really make the cutscenes stand out from the gameplay very much. Not that there was anything wrong with that, but when we get a cutscene in Dynasty Warriors Gundam 3, it is an absolute treat. The visuals are way better than in-game. I feel like if we got a new Dynasty Warriors Gundam on modern consoles with a cel-shaded style, the in-game graphics would probably look just as good as these cutscenes. I honestly wouldn't mind watching a Gundam anime like this. We've kind of had that thanks to the advancement of CG and its use in things like Mobile Suit Gundam The Origin. But I'm going to be honest, though Gundam The Origin has more detail in its mobile suits, much like the difference between a good high grade and a decent real grade, the detail and movement in the cutscenes for Dynasty Warriors Gundam 3 still look great. There's not many games, even in the Musou franchise, that I would willingly sit down and watch all of the cutscenes for. But with Dynasty Warriors Gundam 3, I am really enjoying watching these. If only we had an HD re-release of this game on PS4 or Xbox One. Hell, I'd even settle for backwards compatibility, but unfortunately, I don't think we're gonna get that. And even if it doesn't, this game still looks great on PS3 and Xbox 360. Dynasty Warriors Gundam 2 had probably one of the best improvements in gameplay I've seen in a Warriors game since the upgrade we got from Dynasty Warriors 2 to 3. It literally took every aspect of the first game and improved on it. We also got the ability to play as foot soldier units, which we haven't been able to in any other Warriors game except Samurai Warriors 2 with Nene's special ability and Outlaw's appearance in Ken's Rage. Dynasty Warriors Gundam 3 continues to allow the player to select their favorite grunt suits to take into battle, but it does change up a few things that do bring the game down quite a bit. First of all stages now take place on land. there are no space stages necessarily. In the first 2 games, we had stages where mobile suits would be floating in space with debris scattered around the map, creating the environment. Now, when a stage takes place in the vast open void, you run around on like an asteroid or inside a military base. Most of the stages will take place on an Earth-like stage. You do get some variety, but you can't have a Gundam game without battles actually taking place in the openness of space. On top of that, the design of stages takes a dip now that every stage is just a handful of interconnected bases. At first, you might say, oh cool, this sounds like Gundam Empires, but I assure you,
it is not.
I'll admit, there are different bases that do different things, like a catapult base that can shoot you to a different base after it's been captured, or a base that fires missiles at enemy bases to help take them over. It's not like Empires where you need to create a line between your main camp and the enemies. It's more like the base version of Dynasty Warriors 5, but with more complexities. Where Dynasty Warriors Gundam 3 steps away from the praise is how there are just narrow corridors that connect each base. There's rarely any fighting that goes on between bases. You may find a group of 5 to 10 enemy troops heading towards your own base, but there's never skirmishes happening in these pathways. Then there's the fact that morale here is used to respawn officers, meaning you can kill an enemy pilot only to see them respawn later. This also works with allies as well as you. Yes, if you die and there's enough morale left, you can respawn. It's weird. It almost feels like the game was developed with a handheld in mind. Think back to the games like Samurai Warriors State of War or Dynasty Warriors Volume 2. These narrow paths that connect the bases almost feel like a second thought with how little happens in them. It's surprising this game never got any special ports like on the PSP or a later Vita release. I think this stage design would have been great on a handheld because thanks to the way it's been designed, stages also take less time to complete. All in all, I'm just not a fan.
Pro.
Even though they didn't quite stick the landing with changing the stage layout, they did succeed in a similar category to Dynasty Warriors Gundam 2, and that's the changes to the playable mobile suits. First off, we now get suits from more series. I mentioned earlier that Unicorn and 00 had anime releases between the second and third game, and we see the main protagonist and antagonist suits joining the roster for these too. Besides that though, we also get suits from After War Gundam X and 0083 Stardust Memory. It would have been nice to also see some inclusion from War in the Pocket, like maybe Gundam Alex or the Zaku Kai, or we could have seen something from the 8th MS team, like Gundam Ground Type or Easy 8. And you know I'm going to say it, but the Goof Custom would have been great to see. But I digress. The roster has been expanded yet again from 66 mobile suits to 74, and even up to 79 thanks to DLC. We even get new mobile suits from Gundam Wing, which may be one of the reasons I actually played the shit out of this game. We finally get to see the likes of Death Scythe Hell, Heavy Arms Kai, and Tall Geese 2. We also get a new sentient mobile suit in the form of Night Gundam, who also comes from the world of SD Gundam just like Musha and Musha Mark II. I was excited to see this, but it's not just main character mobile suits that we see entering the fray. We also get new foot soldier units like the Act Guy from many of the Universal Century series, Gedlev and Einarad from Victory Gundam, Dark Army from G Gundam, Kapul from Turn A, and Jin from Gundam Seed. I'm really happy to see that it wasn't just the big guns that were added as playable. It's nice to see them add these grunts into the mix. We also see an update to both Burning and Master Gundam to add idle animations. Considering they're piloted by real people wearing suits that capture their movement, this only makes sense for them to have an idle animation. But wait, there's more! They also decided that some mobile suits deserved an upgrade and gave the Hammerby, Turn X, and Gun Cannon a full 6-hit combo complete with new moves. I complained about the Turn X only being given a 4-hit combo in my last review, but I didn't expect the Hammerby or Gun Cannon to be given the same treatment. I kind of understand the Gun Cannon getting the main character package, but Hammerby is the more surprising one because several characters pilot the Hammerby. But I won't complain if that means that we might have more mobile suits get this treatment in the next entry. The Gian also saw an upgrade from being a normal grunt unit to a 4-hit combo suit. This makes sense because Mikuve is a pretty imposing character in the original anime, and he's playable here. I actually mentioned that in my previous review, so I'm glad to see they understood how some suits should play. I talked a little bit about the story mode in the first 2 games, and in both instances they ended up being cons. For the first game, there were a lot of moments completely omitted from the anime, and while the second game gave us more of the story, it also took away some characters who would have given a different perspective on those battles. Well, I'm here to report that it could have been so much worse. It could have been Dynasty Warriors Gundam 3. You see, this game is a weird anomaly when it comes to its story. The main story mode is completely original and includes 3 chapters. Depending on which character you you choose, they will be affiliated with 3 different paths. This may sound like a nice refreshing romp, but the issue is that everybody ends up in the same place. You see, the first chapter has 3 different starting points: those who understand, those who fight, and those who doubt. These are the 3 starting factions. We then see 2 different second chapters with 4 peace and 4 victory. Then the story culminates with all characters sharing the same third chapter, for reform. The biggest issue here is that the story feels truncated, like all the characters just accept that they're all from a different world. They end up on a battlefield together and decide, hey, you fight against the people that were attacking me, we might as well join forces. It's incredibly forced. While there may be small references here and there, like Amuro and Ko talking about how they both know who Gato is, it doesn't really provide any substantial story moments or even any level of fan service. When the story starts to split between 4 peace and 4 victory, it really starts to go down the path of these are the good guys and these are the bad guys of each respective series. We see Amuro, Camille, and Setsuna teaming up while Frontal, Trace, and Char join forces. The final chapter is where everyone joins together to fight against Night Gundam, who was the one that brought them all together. When you step back and look at the whole story, it almost feels like they were chasing a similar theme to the original mode story in the first Dynasty Warriors Gundam, where all the pilots find themselves on a mysterious planet and fight to achieve their dreams. The main thing that holds this third entry back from being on the same level as that story is how there's only one real ending. We start with 3 factions that could have easily had 3 different endings. In fact, it would have been nice to see maybe 5 to 7 different factions based on personalities and ideals that are fighting together for something specific. We could have seen a more grand story that dived into the potential of fan service, but no, we got this. We also didn't really get much in the form of missions from the anime. I will give Dynasty Warriors Gundam 3 this: they do include more stories from more anime. Pretty much if there is a character from an anime, we get to see a mission involving a stage from their story. Unfortunately, since Dynasty Warriors Gundam 3 doesn't have grunt units for all of the characters from each series, we don't necessarily get the most accurate depiction. For the wing stages, we don't have Leos and Maganax for foot soldiers, and we don't have Sandrock or Ultron. We do, however, get to see the same story missions from series like Mobile Suit Gundam, Zeta, Double Zeta, and Char's Counterattack. The issue here is that there's not nearly as many cutscenes as there are in the first 2 games. In fact, if I recall correctly, there's only 1 cutscene per series, meaning if you're hoping to jump into this game and experience a story you know and love just in a Musou format, you're going to be shit out of luck here. Bro, I know I've been complaining about a lot of the changes that take place in Dynasty Warriors Gundam 3, but there are a few changes that are for the better. First off, victory poses are back. Kinda. The camera pans around the mobile suit and looks up at them with the victory fanfare going on. Though I would have loved to see the old school victory poses make a return, I am cool with this. Whenever I would play something like Dynasty Warriors 7 or 8, I would try to turn the camera in a way that did look at the character closer, kind of making my own pseudo victory pose. So with Dynasty Warriors Gundam 3 adding this, it makes me happy that I don't really have to do that myself. I know I also complained about the combat, but not all of the changes are bad. In fact, there's now a partner that you can take into battle with you, and after filling the partner meter, you can have them launch an attack for you. Sometimes this can even be pilots of mobile armors joining you. Depending on the situation and the partner equipped, it can really help you when you're in a bind. As well, if you kill an enemy with a Musou attack, they will explode, dealing damage to the enemies around them. This also happens if you've taken over a base and you kill weakened enemies with a charge attack. It can also be really useful in taking out stragglers after you've captured an enemy base. I also didn't really touch on this in my previous review, but with Dynasty Warriors Gundam 2's mission mode, a lot of the stages are shared between pilots, but you will need to complete that stage individually with each character. This artificially extended replayability. It's fine if there's certain missions that are exclusive to certain characters, but when I have to clear the Zaku collection mission with every single character, I don't want to unless it involves a trophy or an achievement. With Dynasty Warriors Gundam 3, the missions that are shared between characters also share the clear status. The only thing that's not shared between all characters are the story chapters, which are only shared between the ones that actually are affiliated with those factions. That does mean that all the anime story stages appear for every character, but they can only be played as the main character and mobile suit of those stages. For the stages where only specific pilots or suits can be used, you'll be able to find that on the mission select screen. This does unfortunately mean that after you've completed one of the anime stages, you won't be able to go in with a different pilot or mobile suit a la free mode. But missions aren't the only thing that's shared now. Licenses to pilot the main character suits are also shared among all characters. This is so great in my opinion, because in Dynasty Warriors Gundam 2, I mainly played as Hiro. I would unlock all of the licenses for him after increasing friendships enough, but then I would go to play as somebody else and lose all of that progress. Licenses are also just easier to unlock now. Most of them are unlocked by completing the anime stages and then buying the license from the shop. Once it's been bought, you can pilot that suit as any character that you've unlocked. This is with the exception of Night Gundam, who is playable, but can only pilot Night Gundam for obvious reasons. I mean, it would be weird for a sentient giant mech to be piloting another mech, though it would be hilarious to see a Gundam piloting a mobile armor. I guess we did see that in Unicorn with the Neo Geong. Speaking of the Neo Geong, there are still mobile suits missing from the roster even after the additions made in this entry. I wouldn't necessarily expect Neo Geong in this game because Unicorn only started airing in 2010 when this was released, and Wikipedia says it ended in 2014. So I don't know if we would have seen Neo Geong at the time of this game's release. But Luna Maria Hawk is still without her Zaku gunner, even though she is a pilot here. She appears piloting Char's Zaku 2 similar to the previous game, which is super disappointing. We also see Schwartz Bruder from G Gundam join the roster of pilots, but his Gundam Spiegel is nowhere to be seen. I mentioned this earlier, but Sandrock and Ultron from Wing weren't added even though they seem like a perfect fit for a warrior-style game. But for some reason, we have Heavy Arms Kai. Yes, let's not add the ones with swords to our hack and slash game, but we'll add the one with a plethora of guns. Mobile armors are still not playable. The Goof is still considered a grunt unit, even though Rambarel appears very frequently throughout missions. I also don't know how they decided the Gien should become a 4-hit combo suit and not the Goof. Both Makuve and Rambarel are playable pilots. It just doesn't make sense. And Char, Zagok, and Zhang are also still only 4-hit combo suits, even though one of the biggest characters in the franchise is their pilot. And for some reason, they decided the Gun Cannon and Hammerby deserved the upgrade instead. I just don't understand that. I will also mention that there is a loss of scale with Dynasty Warriors Gundam 3 thanks to the way the stages have been designed. With the bases the way they are, and the corridors between them all being designed in a way that fit mobile suits perfectly, it means that you no longer feel like you're piloting a giant mech anymore. Every so often you might see a tree or a road and be reminded of the scale of these robots, but then you'll play a stage that looks like you're in a castle and the bricks on the ground will feel too big compared to the mobile suits, almost like you're human-sized. I really miss the old stages where it was an actual environment that you'd be running around with trees, roads, and buildings giving you a real feel of piloting a giant mech. I will say each mobile suit is properly scaled between each other, so New Gundam is taller than most suits and the wing suits are smaller, but again, it doesn't feel right. Then we need to talk about the music, because not only does the Japanese release of Dynasty Warriors Gundam 3 get some music from the various anime, it's new music compared to what we got in the first two games. I'll also mention that the music original to the game is not on the same level as the previous titles. The new music is more J-pop inspired than the symphonic techno rock that we got in the first two games. It doesn't really make you feel like you're pushing through the battlefield anymore. Instead, I feel like a disco ball is gonna drop in the middle of an enemy main camp and we're gonna have a dance-off with glow sticks. Dynasty Warriors Gundam 3 also had a lot more DLC than the second game. Where Dynasty Warriors Gundam 2 only had DLC stages, we finally get to see some new mobile suits and pilots. I thought this would be a great way to add the characters and suits that I mentioned we were missing, but not only did we only get one character from Gundam Unicorn with the others being from 00, all of the DLC for Dynasty Warriors Gundam 3 is no longer available. I don't understand why, because the DLC from the second game is still available for download. I also only had the chance to get Merida with the Kishitria and Mr. Bushido with Susanoo. There are 3 other characters and suits that I didn't get to buy before they were taken down. That includes Lock-On with Chiridim, Alleluia with Arios, and Tierra with the Sarah V. And unless you bought and downloaded these before they were taken away, you have to go without. When I go to do a full review of a game, I do like to make sure that I have the complete package with all DLC. It makes me incredibly disappointed that I can't do that here. In the end, Dynasty Warriors Gundam 3 was a mixed bag for me. I love the new look with the cel-shaded graphics so much, and the way they look in the cutscenes just made me want to experience more of the story, even though it just didn't stick the landing. I also liked a few combat changes and the additional mobile suits, even though the stage design wasn't really up my alley. I mentioned it earlier that I think this would have been much better as a portable spin-off, and that really remains true. If this were Dynasty Warriors Gundam Portable, I think it would have been a great entry to have on PSP or even on the Vita. beta. The stages feel shorter, so having a pick up and go Gundam game with this format wouldn't have been too bad. But with this being the next entry in the Gundam Warriors series on home consoles, I do think it's a downgrade overall from Dynasty Warriors Gundam 2. And that's why I give Dynasty Warriors Gundam 3 a 7 out of 10. I honestly don't know why I put so many hours into this game back when it first came out, when Dynasty Warriors Gundam 2 had about half of that. It doesn't make sense to me, and I would love to go back and put the time and effort I put into this third entry back into the second instead. I miss having the anime story be the main focus above all else. I miss the more open stage design. I can't shake the feeling that this was meant to be a spin-off for a handheld entry. The way the combat controls, it still feels like a Musou game, but playing through these stages just makes it feel like it wasn't actually developed by Omega Force. We also don't get to see a lot of the mobile suits that I feel would have been ideal to include, like Sandrock and Ultron from Wing. It really would have taken 4 to 5 more mobile suits to really be able to have a Wing story stage that felt accurate. Besides Sandrock and Ultron, we could have had a Leo and Maganak, and if you're feeling a little extra, add the Ares as well. I also don't understand how Hammerby and Gun Cannon got upgraded to a 6-hit mobile suit, while the Zhang and Charge Zagok are still left at a 4-hit combo. Then there's the fact that the DLC is no longer available for purchase or download. I was able to re-download the missions and characters thanks to going through my Xbox 360 profile's purchase history, but I shouldn't have to do that. This game can't be complete for me anymore. I will say that luckily the DLC characters do become playable in the next entry, so it's not like I'm missing out on much other than just seeing these mobile suits in this game. It just really disappoints me that I technically have an incomplete version of Dynasty Warriors Gundam 3 and there's nothing I can do about it. I will say it's not all bad. There's a reason it got a 7 out of 10. I still had fun overall and was able to just tackle this game without caring much about the story. Much like a classic Warriors game, it was one of those turn off your brain and hack away kind of experiences. I would still recommend people to pick up Dynasty Warriors Gundam 3 because it does offer up good fun and a wide range of characters and mobile suits to play as. I'm just hopeful that we see a return to form with the next entry. It doesn't need to blow me away, but I'd just like to see the same highs as Dynasty Warriors Gundam 2. Anyways, everybody, thank you so much for watching my review of Dynasty Warriors Gundam 3. If you enjoyed it, give it a like and subscribe for more. Comment with your thoughts below and let me know what you think of the cel-shaded graphics. If you'd like to help support the channel and what I do here, you can join the guild just like these awesome people that you're seeing on screen right now. You can join them at the end of every single video for just $1 a month over on Patreon, or if you'd like to help support the channel in a one-off donation, you can also join the volunteer unit over on Ko-fi. There's other rewards and other tiers as well, so check out the links that you see on screen, and I will see you all down in the comments.